Welcome, everyone. Thank you for participating in the Outdoor Equity Grants Program Technical Assistance Workshop. I'm Cedric Mitchell, the Deputy Director for Community Engagement Division, which oversees the Office of Grants and Local Services and the Office of Community Involvement. Before we begin, I'd like the team to introduce themselves, starting with Victor. Kyle.
Yeah, my name is Kyle Bolin. I'm one of the competitive review project officers, and I will be answering some questions in the chat. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Schilp. I'm a project officer here at OGALS. Thank you so much for attending today's workshop.
Hello, my name is Julianne Coronado. I'm also a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thanks for joining today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esmeralda Bermudez, and I'm a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you all to our project officer, Nikki Lambert. She is working behind the scenes and doing her magic and doing screen share for us today. So enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
And thank you, team. I'm Victor Battino, Program Manager for the application process. I hope you enjoy the workshop today, and we look forward to answering your questions today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is the team that will be presenting the workshop to you today. We're very excited to talk about the Outdoor Equity Grants Program. We'll call it OEP from this point forward, just for short. The workshop will provide guidance for the round 2 of the OEP program, in which applications are due December 14th, 2023. Round 1 funded $57 million for 125 programs throughout California. This round, will provide $50 million to continue the legacy of the communities to participate in the outdoor experiences within their communities at state parks and other park lands. OEP is a unique funding opportunity that provides funding for transportation, logistics, program operations, and community and capacity costs associated with reaching historically underserved urban and rural communities throughout California. As we begin our workshop, I want you to be aware of a few approaches to this program. OEP funds are for program operations only. Specifically, construction projects are not eligible. Programs that combine both multiple activities within an underserved community, multiple trips that provide access to natural area destinations, and programs that will span over multiple years will be the most competitive. You will learn about using the community home base. This approach the community home base approach, for the purposes of this program, we will go into more detail as we go through the program today. The presenters that will be coming afterwards will be describing this for you in more detail. Before I turn it over to the team, a couple of things I'd like to talk about. First of all, let's just talk about money. $700,000 is the grant amount cap per application. However, more than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency or organization. You can submit a separate application for each additional community home base that you and your partners are capable of serving. For example, let's say you plan to serve 3 rural towns. 3 applications are submitted for the 3 towns at $300,000 each. All 3 grants are awarded. That would mean that you will receive a total of $900,000. That may be possible. If one of the 3 grants is awarded, both the state and your organization will be clear on what community will be served through the awarded application. Please keep these points in mind as we go through today. A couple of things I also wanted to mention to you. As you're looking at this program, one of the things that we did when we first developed it in conjunction with through the focus groups that we had throughout the state is that this program needed to be different. It's not just a program for trips for kids. It's not just about getting buses, but it's about empowering communities and helping to make certain that people have a clear understanding that nature is wherever they are, that whether it's a close to home experience or one that is far away, that there's relevancy for them to participate. Also, it's looking at building capacity within communities so that in the event that this money runs out, that the community will have the ability to access nature on their own terms, regardless of whether or not they have an escort like one of our agencies to make that happen. They should have, at the end of this program, a full access to what is already theirs, and that is nature. It belongs to all of us. So as you're thinking about your programs, thinking in terms of how are we going to empower communities, how are we going to engage them in something that is different? Perhaps your organization may already provide excellent services, but we ask you to think in terms how you're elevating the services that you're going to be providing for the future. And that's the purpose of this program, is really to look at how we can serve people in a different way, in a sustainable way, and ensure that those who have not had access to nature will be empowered to do so. So on that note, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to invite Christine Schilp to come up and we'll get started. Christine?
Hi, it's Julianne. I'll be taking over right here.
Julianne.
We're glad to have you here with us today. Just wanted to let you know the webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the OEP webpage. A few of the webinar's features to be aware of, we'll be going over in a moment here. So first off is closed captioning. So Nikki is showing where to find that. You'll click on the More button where the 3 dots are. Then you'll go down to Language and Speech, and then finally click on Turn on Live Captions. The next feature to be aware of is the chat feature, which Nikki is currently circling right now. For those of you who do not see the chat feature, past participants have been able to access it by exiting and re-entering the workshop. Again, please add any questions you have during the workshop to that chat feature. We will answer questions directly in the chat, and we'll also be addressing some of your questions out loud. If you see an icon such as a thumbs up or heart next to your question, that is our way of communicating with each other internally as to who will be responding to your comment. With that, I would like to go ahead and jump over to review the agenda. All right, so here on the agenda, you can see that we are currently in the workshop orientation, and we'll be going over the timeline and competitive chart next. Then we will jump into the application guide to do a program overview. Then we'll review the application packet and checklist items, as well as the eligible cost and appendices, followed by a closure by our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell. If you have any technical issues today during the workshop, please email ogals@parks.ca.gov. And after the webinar today, please contact your competitive review project officer with any additional questions you may have. Next, let's jump over to the timeline. Here is the OEP Round 2 timeline, which can be located on our OEP webpage. This past summer, 2023, we announced Round 2 of OEP, and we started our technical assistance workshops back in August, and today is actually our last workshop. Next, I want you to pay special attention to the next date on here, which is December 14th, 2023, which is the application due date. Applications are due by 5 p.m. on this date. Then the summer of 2024, we'll be making grant announcements. The OEP program start date will be around summer or /fall of 2024. And the OEP program can operate for approximately 3 years from the date of grant award. Grantees are not to start the program until after the funds are awarded, which is estimated to be in summer of 2024. And the department is currently working on budget clarification for the end date and should know more in 2024. As soon as we do know more, we'll add that to our OEP webpage with the updated grant performance period. Next, let's jump over to the competitive chart. This document helps serve as an outline of the OEP program and application guide. We recommend that applicants review this document first before diving into the application guide. If the answer to any of the questions listed on this chart is no, then the proposed OEP program may need to be adjusted to meet the competitive priorities. This document is also located on our OEP webpage. Now we can begin going into the OEP application guide, which is also found on our webpage. As we go through the application guide, we'll be going page by page and we'll point out key information on the page that we are on, and we'll ask for any questions you might have for that page and section. Let's go ahead and turn to page 5 for the table of contents. So this is the table of contents page. This lists the 4 sections: the program overview, the application package. These are all of the items you'll be submitting for your application. Then we have the eligible cost, and finally the appendices, which contains technical assistance for applicants, including grant selection criteria guidance, which provides additional direction and tips for the grant selection criteria. There are 4 color-coded sections which correlate to the top headers so applicants can orientate themselves to where they are in the guide. We're going to go over each of these items today, so if you could please hold your questions until we reach that specific part of the presentation. I also want to draw your attention to the last sentence on this page. All words and terms in small caps are defined in the back of this guide on pages 59 to 64. I will now go ahead and hand it over to Christine to go over the program overview. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Julianne. Okay, so if we can turn to page 6. This is the program overview introduction here. So the OEP program supports the health of Californians through the creation of outdoor programs by funding program operation and transportation costs in underserved communities. Again, OEP will not fund capital projects. So we're going to take a look at some of the key terms and words in small caps to have you get a better idea of this program. So let's start with the definition of community home base, which is on page 60 in the back of the guide. So when you hear the term community home base, what is a community home base? It is a central gathering place for residents of an underserved community where the majority of targeted participants live. For example, a school, a recreation center, community meeting space, or a local park may serve as the central gathering place in the underserved community. Another key term is the outdoor program. And so let's turn to that definition. And that definition starts at the bottom of page 62. It's a pretty long and detailed definition. So it starts there on 62 and then goes to page 63. So what is the outdoor program? It's experiences proposed through one application that promotes education, physical activities, leadership, and career pathways that strengthen participants' connection with the natural world. So these include activities in the community and transporting residents to natural area trips from the community home base. These, again, do not involve actual construction of projects of buildings or land infrastructure. So what are the items included in that outdoor program? Well, there's the bullet points there, and it's self-discovery activities that empower participants to develop a sense of connection with nature, which may include unstructured time spent in the natural area trip. Also, activities that contribute to healthy lifestyles, sound nutritional habits, and improved outdoor educational and recreational experiences. Also, integrating instruction in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics that connects to the nature experiences stewardship. So continuing there on the top of page 63, again, this is still part of the outdoor program definition, is activities that foster stewardship of the environment using curriculum, pursuant to coordinating instructional resources and strategies, for providing active pupil participation with on-site conservation efforts, promoting self-learning, service learning opportunities between schools and local communities, and assessing the impact to participating students of the Unified Education Strategy on pupil achievement and resource conservation. Also, curriculum that is aligned to the content standards for California public schools adopted by the State Board of Education, and service learning and community outreach activities relating to strengthening the connection to the natural world. And finally, therapeutic recreation that uses nature to help people heal. So that is all of those items are defined as that outdoor program. So a couple of other definitions I want to take you to is activities in the community. And that starts on page 59 for the definition. And so again, the definition that I had just read you about outdoor program, there's two components of it. And so it's going to be the activities in the community and the natural area trips. So this is the first definition here, which is the activity in the community. So this is an outdoor or indoor education components within a 5-mile radius of the community home base designed to achieve these two goals. So preparing participants for natural area trips and learning about the community's environment. And this can be environmental justice analysis and reporting that may involve youth leadership development in the community. It could be discovering nature in action in the community through educational walks, etc., or curriculum-based activities at the community home base. So the second part of the outdoor program are those natural area trips. So let's take a look at what is a natural area trip. And this is on page 62. And the definition of natural area trip is a location outside the 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging to access by residents. And this can be such as beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, and state and national parks within California. Zoos, aquariums, natural history museums, and botanical gardens may also be eligible destinations if the primary purpose is for nature education. All right, so those are our key terms here. If we can turn back to page 6. Perfect. And so who is eligible for this grant program? So it's public agencies, and these include all local, state, and federal agencies. Examples include school districts and other public education agencies, cities and counties, joint powers authorities, open space authorities, regional open space districts, federal and state recognized tribes, and other relevant public agencies. Also, nonprofits with 501c3 status are eligible applicants. So the grant performance period, Julian had spoke about this prior. The grant performance period for each round will be posted at that Parks OEP website. So again, we'll be posting that shortly. The amount available for each round will also be posted. So for this round, it's $50 million. The amount per application, the maximum grant request per community home base is $700,000. The minimum grant request per community home base is $20,000. There is also no match requirement for this grant program. So one community home base equals one application. This allows for reporting on the impacts of one OEP within one community. Multiple community home bases mean that an applicant will be turning in multiple applications. And that's because each community home base requires its own separate application. Now, one applicant can submit multiple applications. And if they do that, an applicant may receive multiple grants to serve multiple communities. And so an example of this is on the next page, on page 7. And you'll see here that while $700,000 is the maximum grant amount, it is per application again. So per that one community home base. More than $700,000 may be awarded to one applicant. An applicant can submit a separate application for each additional community it can serve. So for example, if an applicant wanted to have 3 communities, 3 separate community home bases that they'll be applying for, if they were to come in for $300,000 per community home base, they could possibly be awarded each grant request, which then would be a total of $900,000. So again, it's important to note that that maximum of $700,000 is per application per community home base. All right, and so with that, please put any questions that you have in the chat feature. And I'm going to turn it back over to Julianne.
Thank you, Christine. All right, let's go ahead and turn to page 8 for the program overview of the community home base and grant selection criteria. This page explains to the applicant that each application will, 1, identify a central gathering place that will be a community home base in an underserved community that needs access to outdoor programs, like a community center, a school, a local park, etc. And 2, plan activities in the community home base and plan trips to natural areas outside the community home base. For example, activities in the community could include preparing participants for a natural area trip or providing educational nature walks along a creek in a community. And trips to natural areas could include transporting the participants from the community home base to natural areas that are challenging to access, such as regional, state, or national parks, beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, or desert areas statewide. To summarize these steps, the applicant will establish a community home base in an underserved community where a majority of participants live, and organize educational activities in the community in natural areas from the community home base that serve participants who live primarily within the half-mile of the community home base. Let's go ahead and turn to page 63 to look at the definition of participant. Participants are defined as residents who will join the outdoor program if the grant is awarded. The first word in the definition of participants is residents. Let's take a look at that definition, which is on the same page, 3 definitions down. Residents are defined as the population living primarily within the half-mile of the community home base. Now with that, let's go ahead and turn to page 9 for the community home base diagram. This page shows the basic approach for this program. The first step is to identify a community home base in the community for an essential gathering place, like a recreation center or a school. The second step is to have activities within the community home base, like preparing families for a camping trip. And the third and final step is to organize trips from the community home base to natural areas. Let's turn to page 10 for the application process. The application deadline is by 5 p.m. on December 14th, 2023. Applications will need to be submitted online in our submittable platform. You can start your application today, or at least take a look at the application online. Please do not wait until 3 p.m. on December 14th to start entering your application, as there will be no extensions. The application process section outline identifies important steps to follow as you submit your application. At the bottom of this page is the grant administration process. Applicants who receive a grant must attend a mandatory grant administration workshop before receiving their contracts. This workshop will review the payment process and other administrative processes to ensure successful completion of the program. The grant administration process continues on to the next page. Let's take a look at number 5 there. We will also be offering successful applicants outdoor recreation leadership training from the Department's Office of Community Involvement. This is voluntary, but again, it is available to successful applicants. Up to 2 people who represent the grantee and will directly engage with participants may attend the training for free. Graduates of this training will have access to FAM Camp supplies. FAM Camp includes free use of camping supplies for up to 30 participants, which consists of tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, lanterns, and cooking equipment, as well as free use of campsites in specific state parks. Grantees would only need to bring their food and participants. Keep in mind the OEP grant may cover the cost of transportation and food to FAM Camp. Please put any questions you have on this in the chat feature, and I will now hand it over to Esme.
Thanks, Julianne. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the application package. Nikki, if you can take us to page 12, please. Great, thank you. So the next pages we will cover contains information and guidance on completing the application. Submit only the items requested in the checklist. Do not submit supplemental materials, such as letter of support. Applicants can find the forms used for this application in a fillable version on the OEP webpage. So we can turn to page 13. Thank you. This is the application checklist. Applicants will use the checklist on this page to organize the application, which provides the documents that will need to be uploaded into our online application portal submittable. This checklist identifies which items are required, the authorized representative's signature. If we could turn to page 14, and this is the project application form. This page provides instructions on how to fill out the application form. And if we turn to page 15, please, this is the actual application form. And this application form provides boxes that you will go ahead and gonna include the program name, the community home base name and location, the applicant's contact information, and on this form, it must be signed by the authorized representative. If we can go ahead and turn to page 16, please. Great, thank you. And this is the grant selection criteria. So this page includes an overview of the grant selection criteria, checklist item number 2. This criteria will be used to rank all statewide applications. There are a total of 8 criteria for this program that adds up to a maximum of 100 points. So notice the bullets here. All applicants start with 0 points. No one loses points. Points are only gained. To guide the applicants, each criteria has a scoring chart. There's also technical assistance available for each separate criteria in the back of the guide. And we'll review those while we review each of the criteria. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those on the chat feature. And we're going to move on. And let's go ahead and jump into the meat and potatoes of the application, shall we? We're going to review the grant selection criteria. So we can turn to page 17, and we're going to go over the grant selection criteria number 1, the community home base. So criteria number 1 focuses on the community home base. This criteria is broken into 2 parts. We have part A and part B. Part A and its scoring chart are based off the numbers provided by the Community Fact Finder report that is generated from the Community Fact Finder website. The OAP looks closely at the categories of income, poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learner levels around the community home base. Part B and its scoring chart asks applicants to describe the challenges affecting the residents. It also asks specifically why the community home base was selected and what is the need for its residents to have access to an outdoor program. In this section, this is also your opportunity to include information beyond Part A. Something that I would like to mention here, if you're a round 1 OAP grant recipient and you are reapplying, this section is where you're going to talk about how the residents lack access to an outdoor program. If you will be serving a different population for this current round, let's just say you focus on 4th graders for round 1 of OAP, and for this current round, the focus will be 8th graders, you will need to explain how this current round will have different activities or a more robust program that is different from your round 1 OAP application, and etc. So as you can see on the bottom of page 17 and scrolling a little bit on page 18, you'll see the scoring rubrics shown here, and it shows the rankings that will be based on all statewide applications for the categories of medium household income, people in poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learners. In addition, at the bottom of page 18, applicants can gain up to 5 points for describing challenges beyond those described in Part A. So now let's go ahead and demonstrate to you all how to find the specific information on the Community Fact Finder within a half-mile radius of a community home base. So the link to get to the Community Fact Finder is here in the guide within Criteria 1. And Nikki is actually hovering her mouse over it. So if we can click on that link, it's going to direct you to the Community Fact Finder website. And we're going to use an example for today's webinar. And we're going to type in an address, the state capital in Sacramento. So Nick is going to type in 1315 10th Street in Sacramento, California. And she's going to click on search. And there you go. The numbers will go ahead and they're going to be populated. Okay, so the numbers here we'll be asking for within these applications are located under the medium household income section, the people below poverty section, free or reduced price meals section, and English learner section. The last two categories of free or reduced price meals and English learners are being pulled from the nearest public elementary, middle, and high school to your community home base. If you feel like you don't know where to start or don't even know or don't even have a community home base in mind, no worries, no fears. The Community Fact Finder tool is easy to use, user-friendly, but it's also a great place to start. I do, however, would like to direct your attention to the bottom of the report, down in the legend. There are some overlays that can be added to the map. So Nikki is showing you where you can find the layers in the legend located on the lower right side corner. The first overlay is for parks, which shows up as green. This overlay is automatically turned on. So once you populate the report, you'll see that is automatically populated. It actually demonstrates the green sections. The second overlay is for disadvantaged communities. So when this is selected, you will see purple for disadvantaged communities and yellow for severely disadvantaged communities. So Nikki, if you could please select disadvantaged communities for us. Thank you. The third layer is for schools. All public elementary, middle, and high schools will show up as yellow blocks. If you have not located a community home base yet, keep in mind parks within the green overlay. Schools with the yellow overlay can be used as community home base if that's where residents gather. You can also move the pin around within the community home base to find the best numbers for your community home base. If your report has the pin located outside of the community home base, we will go ahead and drop the pin in the middle of your community home base and run a new report. So definitely make sure that the pin is where it's located where you want it at. So once you have that pin located where you really want it at, then you go ahead and click on the Get Report button on the top. Nikki's hovering her mouse over it. So it's going to download and give you the Community Fact Finder report. And this is what it looks like. This is the report. In the upper right corner, there is a project ID. And where Nikki's actually circling. And that project ID is going to be entered into your submittable application, your online application. You will pull the data from the medium household income, the people below poverty, the free or reduced price meals, and the English learners information, and add it to your response to Part A of Criteria 1. I want to emphasize here, only submit one community fact finder report for each proposed community home base. Remember, only one community home base per application is allowed. So Nikki, if you can take us to page 49, we'll turn to the technical assistance for this criteria. Thank you. The community home base should be strategically located within walking distance for the majority of residents and should meet the intent of the funding opportunity. Review the definition of challenges and use it as a guide to tell the community's story. If you have any questions on this particular section, please put those on the chat feature. I will now hand it over to Julianne.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and turn to page 19 for grant selection criteria number 2, community planning. Here, applicants will describe how the community's feedback was obtained through outreach and to provide the ideas that the community had for outdoor programs, including activities at or near the community home base and activities at the natural area destination that will be implemented. In Part A, you'll describe at least 2 meetings that were conducted in person at the community home base or within a half mile of the community home base. In Part B, for activities in the community, you'll describe the topics presented at the meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for the activities in the community. Then, in Part C, for natural area trips, you'll describe topics presented at meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for natural area trips. Let's go to the next page, page 20. Here you'll see that in order to score the maximum points, an applicant will have at least 2 meetings in person at or near the community home base, involving at least 10 youth and 10 adults in total through the combined meetings. Also, points will be given for listing the accepted ideas for activities in the community and natural area trips. Do not list trip ideas that will not be included in the outdoor program. Technical assistance can be found on page 50. And this page includes ideas for in-person meetings. Please put any questions you have in the chat feature. And I will now hand it over to Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Julianne. Okay, so now we're going to go to grant selection criteria 3, which starts on page 21. Perfect. And so just for a quick refresh, again, you'll be having your outdoor program is what you're going to be applying for. And so part of that our outdoor program, there's 2 parts. There are the activities in the community, and then there's the natural area trips. So grant selection criteria 3 is your activities in the community. And then I will be going over grant selection criteria 4, which are your natural area trips after the activities in the community. So this is focused again on criteria 3 is the activities in the community. And this criteria is asking applicants to describe the proposed activities in the community within a 5-mile radius of the community home base. Again, that activities in the community is defined in the back of the guide. And so for Part A, we are asking applicants to provide the activity's title and location. Again, we're going to be asking for that address to see where the activity will take place within that 5-mile radius of the community home base. Also, we are going to be asking applicants to identify if this particular activity is learning about the community's environment or is preparing for natural area trips or both. We'll be asking for a summary, which is to provide 2 sentences about the planned activities. Also, we're going to be wanting to know what the educational goal or goals are, and the age groups. So again, we're going to ask have you provide a 1-sentence general description of participants' age groups. Also, for part B, we are going to be asking how many days in total will involve all of the activities in the community. Lastly, we're going to be asking for part C there, of the total participants, how many youths will be served by all the activities in the community? And Nikki has highlighted there a example of the calculation of that. So moving on towards the bottom of this page, page 21, is the scoring rubric for points for part A. And so to gain 2 points, that first box there is at least 1 activity in the community will include learning about the community's environment. The second box, you will gain 2 points if at least 1 activity in the community will include preparing participants for natural area trips. And lastly there, that third box, you'll gain 2 points if at least 1 activity in the community will include multi-generational residents, including families and older adults. So continuing on the next page, page 22, this continues the scoring rubrics for that criteria number 3. And so for all 3 of these, you will notice that they are compared to other statewide applications of similar grant requests. And so Nikki's highlighting it there. So we're going to be comparing the activities in the community, also the number of activity days, and the number of youth participants. Again, compared to statewide applications of similar grant requests. So you'll notice there that similar grant request is in all small caps. So let's take a quick look at what the definition is of similar grant requests. And that starts on page 63. So you'll notice here that for the grant selection criteria 3 and 4, that we will be comparing applications only against other applications in the following groupings. And so you'll see there grant requests that will be coming in between $20,000 and $99,999 will be compared with each other. And you'll notice on the next page, it's a continuation of that. And so you'll see the other brackets here. And that is, we've done that so that smaller grant requests will be compared to each other and larger grant requests will be compared to each other. So for instance, if an application comes in and the applicant is requesting $20,000 for their program, they are not going to be compared to a program that comes in asking for $700,000. So with that, let's turn back to that page 22. So again, you'll see here, that we have those 3 rubrics. And again, we're going to be looking at the proposed activities and comparing them to each other. Also, we're going to be looking at those number of activity days, again, compared to statewide applications with similar grant requests. And last but not least, the last rubric there, we will be comparing the number of youth participants. compared to other statewide applications with similar grant requests. So at the bottom of the page here, we do have technical assistance that is available for this criteria, and it is on page 52. So if we take a quick turn to page 52, you'll notice there at the top again that to be eligible as an activity in the community, it must involve outdoor or indoor education components within a 5-mile radius of the community home base, designed to achieve the 2 goals of preparing participants for natural area trips and learning about the community's environment. And you can see A through C there. The majority of activities, they should be taking place outdoors. However, indoor education classes or some indoor activities due to weather constraints are acceptable. The 5-mile radius is the straight line distance from the community home base and not driving routes. So applicants may use online tools that provide a straight line distance between the 2 locations. And so with that, if you have any questions about criteria 3, again, please put those in the chat feature. And now that we've talked about activities in the community, we're going to talk about that second part of your outdoor program, which are the natural area trips. And so this is criteria number 4 that starts on page 23. Perfect. So here we are, page 23. Criteria 4, natural area trips. So we were asking applicants to describe the proposed natural area trips. Again, a natural area trip is a location outside of that 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging to access by residents, such as beaches, rivers, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, state and national parks, etc. So what are we looking for? We are asking applicants under Part A there to describe the destination, provide that name and address of where the natural area experience will take place, again, outside that 5-mile radius from the community home base. If a destination will be visited more than once, to please add a parenthesis around the destination's name with the number of reoccurring trips. Also, we will be asking if it's going to be a day trip. We want to know if it's an overnight trip or a number of nights trip. Again, we would like to know the summary. So provide 2 sentences about what the planned activities are going to be during those natural area trips. We will also want to know what the self-discovery goal is. And again, what is self-discovery? It's that unstructured time in nature. So we want to know what types of self-discovery goals will be taking place. Also, we would like to know the educational goal. So we would, provide a sentence about what the educational goal will be within that natural area trip. Also, the age groups. Provide a sentence describing the participant age groups, again, such as, who's attending, families, youth, older adults, etc. So for Part B, we want to know how many natural area trips will be occurring. So this includes reoccurring trips to the same destination. So for Part C, we want to know how many youths will be served by all of the natural area trips. And underneath, where Nikki's highlighting there, is how to calculate the numbers for the total of the natural area trips. Okay, so the bottom of this page is one of the scoring rubrics. So if you take a look here, the first box, you will gain 2 points if at least one natural area trip will be to a destination of the state park system. So building off of that, if you, Nikki, will scroll back up the page. Perfect. So there's the sentence there, and it says, at least a 1-day or overnight trip should be to a destination of the state park system. And we do provide a list of state parks. And so that link there, you'll click on that and you will get a list of all the state park systems. So perfect. So there you go. And you'll be able to find a state park on that website. So going back to page 23 at the bottom. Perfect. That second box in the rubric, you will be gaining 2 points. If the applicant provided a plan for the natural area trips to involve both self-discovery and educational experiences for participants. And last but not least, you'll gain 2 points if at least one natural area trip will include multi-generational residents, including families and older adults. So on the next page, page 24, is a continuance of the criteria 4. And so you'll notice this looks very similar to the last criteria. And it is pretty similar. Again, the range of natural area trips will be compared to other statewide applications, again, of similar grant requests. For points for Part B, we're going to be looking at the number of natural area trips, again, compared to other statewide applications with similar grant requests. And lastly, for points for C, we're going to be looking at the number of youth participants compared to other statewide applications of similar grant requests. So technical assistance is available on this criteria on page 53. So let's take a look at page 53. So here we have examples of eligible activities and education topics. So there's a bunch of different education and activity topics such as camping skills, wildlife viewing, safety, coastal protection, climate change solutions, etc. On the next page, 54, again, I'll draw your attention to that 5-mile radius. So the 5-mile radius is, again, that straight line distance from the community home base and not driving routes. Applicants, again, may use online tools that provide a straight line distance between 2 locations. Again, additional points will not be awarded for having both overnight and day trips. The proposed natural area trips can be all day trips or all overnight trips or any combination. So again, just to recap that 5-mile radius, once you establish your community home base, anything within a 5-mile radius of that community home base will be your activities within the community. Anything outside of that 5-mile radius will be your natural area trips. And so with that, if you have any questions, again, please put them in the chat feature. And now I'm going to hand it over to Julianne.
Thank you, Christine. All right, let's go ahead and turn to page 25 for grant selection criteria number 5, participant recruitment plan. This criteria question asks for a strategy for inviting, recruiting, and encouraging residents with an emphasis on youth that live within a half-mile of the community home base to participate in the outdoor program. Applicants will be able to select from at least 3 of the 10 methods listed in the technical assistance, which is on page 55. Additionally, once you select those 3 methods, you'll also explain why those methods will be effective. Some of these methods could include number 2 there, collaborating with local schools. Schools can also send notices through an online portal or use flyers to inform families and youth about when and where upcoming events will take place. Number 4, conducting door-to-door in-person invitations. And number 7, mailing flyers to residences within the half-mile radius. These are just 3 of the 10 methods that could be used to recruit participants. Now let's turn over to page 26 for grant selection criteria number 6, internships. Internships for this criteria are ones that can be used for future employment resumes or college admissions, for natural resources, environmental justice, or outdoor recreation professions. Down below, the scoring rubric shows the maximum points will be given for 3 interns at 200 hours each. The internships need to be directly related to the outdoor program. Technical assistance for this section can be found on page 56. This page shows a list of 7 types of eligible internship services. These internships can be paid or unpaid. If the internship is paid, this is an eligible grant expense. If you have any questions on this section, go ahead and add that to the chat feature. Let's go ahead and turn to page 27 for grant selection criteria number 7, partnerships and capacity building. Criteria 7 focuses on partnerships with the applicant to help achieve any of the goals outlined on grant selection criteria number 3 for activities in the community, grant selection criteria number 4, natural area trips, or grant selection criteria number 6, internships. The scoring rubric on this page shows maximum points will be given to applicants with 3 or more partnerships. If you look at the bottom of this page, the responses in the application will be sufficient to describe partnership roles at the time of application. If the OEP grant is awarded and the grantee plans to use grant funds to pay a partner, an agreement between the partner and grantee must be formalized that includes the following: a description of the service to be provided, time period for those services, amount of the OEP grant that the grantee will pay the partner, and those partners must report eligible costs, expenditures to the grantee. It is the grantee's responsibility to keep those records for an audit. Now let's go over to page 57 to review the technical assistance for this criteria. Let's review a couple of the partnership examples. Partnership example number 1 for capacity building, such as teaching the applicant or another partner a service skill, culture awareness training, administrative assistance, mentoring, etc. Partnership example number 6, contributing volunteer services. Partnership example number 7, contributing materials, equipment, supplies, food, etc. And partnership example number 8, contributing cash donations. Keep in mind there's no point advantage for greater amounts of committed funds or cash. Now scrolling to the bottom there of this page, we'll go over a few examples that will not receive credit for partnerships. Number 1, entrance to destinations. An entity charging a standard non-discounted entrance admission fee that the public would pay for is not a partnership. Number 2, destination operators. Visiting a destination such as a park or beach is not considered a partnership unless the destination operator contributes to the outdoor program beyond the routine programming available to the public. And number 3, paying vendors. Paying for-profit vendors full price for services such as transportation charter, rentals, lessons, activities, etc. is not a partnership. If you have any questions, go ahead and add those to the chat feature. And I believe we are taking a break. Do you have anything to add, Victor, before we go on break?
Thanks so much, Julianne. Yeah, I just want to reemphasize for those that are new to the program. I just want to really reemphasize a few things about this criteria section that Christine, Julianne, and Esme have been covering. You can absolutely ask questions, everyone. There's 2 ways to ask questions. One is through the chat feature, and the second is at the end of our presentation, which is, I'd say, roughly going to be around 3 p.m. We'll open it up and we'll stay all the way till 4 p.m. answering all of your questions so we can have a group discussion at that time. So thanks, Teresa, for your question. Before we take a 10-minute break, I just want to really emphasize the scoring rubrics that were presented. For example, on your screen right now, you'll see where it says points and there's an 8-point option. And it says the program involves 3 or more partnerships to achieve the goals of criteria 3, 4, or 6. And pay really close attention to those prompts. And the best advice I can give you is to adjust and plan your program following the goals of this program. So if, for example, let's just say you are not planning on having any partners, you would be leaving 8 points on the table. And for a competitive program, you want to maximize the points within your control. So in this case, you would follow the guidance in these guidelines, as well as our technical assistance, and form 3 partnerships to score the maximum points. The second thing is that everything you write in your application will be based on what you plan to complete and achieve by spring of 2027. Okay, and when you respond to the criteria, these are your commitments. So if the grant is awarded, it is the commitments and expectation that you will do what you propose to do based on the criteria. Okay, so that's really my best advice is as you get more and more familiar with these guidelines. Of course, we'll be here to answer questions all the way through December, but pay close attention to the scoring rubrics and adjust your plans and your program accordingly. Okay, all right, great. So we'll take a 10-minute break and let's be back at 2:20. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I hope everyone had a great stretch break. We're going to go ahead and continue on to the last criteria number 8, mentoring youth leaders after the grant performance period. And that's going to be on page 28. All right, thanks so much, Nikki. All right, so for this criteria, applicants will provide a plan for mentoring youth after the grant funds have expired. Sustaining the outdoor program beyond the grant performance period is not required. However, this is about engaging youth after the outdoor program grant has ended. Within this plan, applicants will describe how many youth will be selected as having potential to become future environmental leaders in California, as well as the type of activities the mentoring will involve and the approximate time period. Or if it's not possible to mentor youth after the grant performance period, please explain why. So now let's go dive into page 58, which is the technical assistance for criteria number 8. Thank you, Nikki. So for example, an annual community needs assessment about environmental justice may be conducted and reported by youth. So this concludes the grant selection portion of the Outdoor Equity Program application guide. If you have any questions, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to turn to page 29 and we're going to talk about the Community Fact Finder report and the certification. Thank you, Nikki. And that's going to be on page 29. So this page summarizes the steps we discussed a little earlier regarding the Community Fact Finder. If you remember, only one final Community Fact Finder report for your community home base may be included with each application. Now let's turn to page 30. And this is your Community Fact Finder certification form. This is signed by your authorizing representative, and it certifies that you placed your pin on or inside the boundary of your community home base for your report. Okay, any questions regarding this, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. Now we're going to move on to page 31, the authorizing resolution. The authorizing resolution shows that your governing body approves the application. Please note in the format section highlighted here, thank you, Nikki, the language provided in the resolution must remain unchanged. Now let's move on to page 32 to view the actual authorizing resolution template. Thank you. Please note that we have a fillable template and it's located on the OEP webpage. If you have any questions, please go ahead and add those to the chat feature, and I'm going to hand it over to Christine now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Esme. So now we're going to go to checklist item number 5, which is the grant scope cost estimate form. And so for this, on page 33 here, these are the instructions on how to fill out the grant scope cost estimate form. And on the next page, which we will show you in a few minutes, on page 34 is the actual form itself. So I will be covering the all of the eligible costs section later within this workshop, and we'll be providing some examples of what costs can be included within this grant scope cost estimate form. So on this form, applicants will list only the activities that will be funded by the grant, plus any committed funds, if applicable, during the grant performance period. These are lump sum estimated costs of the activities, must be consistent with the responses that were provided for grant selections criteria 3 and 4. So please do not include any future costs. It is important to note that the total program cost must cover all the activities in the community and the natural area trips described again in criteria 3. And then if you have a little marker there, put 4. So that should say criteria 3 and 4. Also, up to 5% contingency costs can be folded into the line items, but please do not list contingency as its own separate line item. We understand that actual costs may change during the outdoor program. In most cases, a revised grant scope cost estimate form is not required when estimated costs fluctuate during the outdoor program. We are asking to please check the math and dollar amounts between all the forms in the application to ensure that the grant request amount and total program costs are consistent with each other. And so again, what we mean by all the forms, you have the application form, you're going to have this grant scope cost estimate form and the funding sources form. And so all of those forms have to be consistent with each other in regards to the total program costs and the grant request amount. So on the next page, on page 34, this is the actual form. So you'll see there that we have the activities in the community. And so you are going to be listing all of those activities and their titles under that section. And then to the right of them, you're going to be putting that total cost of the activities in the community. And the next grouping there is the natural area trips. And so again, below there, you're going to be listing all of the trip destinations that are consistent to that grant selection criteria 4. And again, if a destination will be visited more than once, to please add that parentheses after the destination's name with the number of reoccurring trips. And then you'll be providing those total costs for the natural area trips on that right-hand side. And then continuing down the form, you'll see that for number 1 there, we're going to be asking applicants to provide the total cost of all activities in the community and natural area trips. So you'll be adding all of those up that you listed below that or above that line. Also, for number 2, we're going to be asking applicants to add the costs for internships from grant selection criteria 6, if applicable. And then for line item number 3, liability insurance premiums that will cover the outdoor program. So you'll be listing those costs there. And then finally, for number 4, we're going to be asking to add all 3 of those items together, and that is going to be your total program cost.
Our internet kicked me off too again earlier.
And so underneath that is going to be the requested grant amount, which you'll be requesting for this OEP program. And so on the next page here, on page 35, this is going to be the grant scope cost estimate certification. And so this certification encourages applicants to be aware of the eligible cost rules when developing their grant scope cost estimate form. So you'll take a look there, and we just want to make sure that the applicant understands that the grant scope cost estimate form will be used to establish the expected grant deliverables, that the cost estimate is based on planning all activities and trips during the grant performance period only, and that the applicant uses the most economical use of state funds when planning the cost estimate. And so again, I'll be going over these later on in the eligible cost section. And so this certification and the grant scope cost estimate form, This is available on our webpage as a fillable form. The actual grant scope cost estimate form looks a little bit different on our website. We have the first page, which will be listing all the activities in the community. And the second page will just be all of the natural area trips. And then the third page on the form is going to be all of those totals. So you'll be able to see that when you go on our webpage, and you'll go under the fillable forms list, and it will be under that grant scope cost estimate form. So with that, if you have any questions about this checklist item, please add it to the chat feature, and I will be handing it over to Julianne.
Thank you, Christine. All right, let's go ahead and turn to page 36 to review the funding sources form. This page includes instructions on how to list the outdoor program's funding sources and any participant fees or loan sources, if applicable, on the funding sources form. If we go ahead and turn to the next page, page 37, we can look at the funding sources form. There is a fillable template available on the OEP webpage. If the grant itself will fund the total program costs, then the top right and bottom right boxes on the form will show the requested grant amount only. If the outdoor program will have any other funding sources in addition to the grant request, then identify each funding source by name, source, amount, and committed date on this form. You'll want to check the math and dollar amounts between all forms in the application to ensure the grant request amount and the total program cost are consistent. If the outdoor program will have participant fees, list the total estimated amount that will be charged on the form. These are fees charged to the participants for costs beyond what the grant will pay for. If any part of the outdoor program will involve fees charged to participants, the amount charged should be reasonable, as the applicant will need to consider participants affected by poverty. Let's go ahead and turn back to page 36. If a funding source is a loan, the applicant must identify the type of loan and shall not use any grant funds for the purpose of making any leverage loan, pledge, promissory note, or similar financial advice or transaction without prior written approval. Lastly, if the funding source is changed during the grant performance period, a revised form is required within 30 days. All right, let's go to page 38 to review checklist item number 7, applicant capacity. Here, applicants will answer 5 questions regarding their capacity to achieve the outdoor program during the grant performance period and their implementation plan for sustaining a successful program. Applicants will respond to the following areas to establish capacity. Number 1. Previous experience with outdoor programs. Number 2, clarity that the applicant will oversee administration if the grant is awarded. Number 3, previous grant funding received. Number 4, previous or ongoing relationships with the residents or stakeholders near the community home base. And number 5, whether or not permits are required and what the plan is to obtain them. The applicant will answer letters A through C listed below. These include letter A, where the applicant describes if the landowners of the locations listed in the response to grant selection criteria number 4 have been contacted and determined if a permit is required. Letter B, if the landowner stated a permit is required, the applicant will provide a copy of the permit or agreement or a plan and timeline to secure the permit or agreement. And letter C, if a permit or agreement is not needed, The applicant will describe the steps taken to verify that no permit or agreement with any of the properties will be required. Go ahead and add any questions you have to the chat feature, and I will now hand it over to Esme.
Thanks, Julianne. All right, so let's go ahead and turn to page 39. And we're going to review checklist item number 8, the reporting certification. Applicants will need to keep clear records for the reporting requirements stated under Assembly Bill 209. In order to meet those requirements, grantees will submit annually the 5 listed reporting requirements shown here to the Office of Grants and Local Services through an online reporting system and before the final grant payment is approved. If you have any questions regarding this section, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. And now let's move on to page 40, which we're going to review checklist item number 9, nonprofit requirements. Okay, so if you're a nonprofit, this is your section to pay close attention to. This page asks nonprofit organizations to provide the information regarding your IRS status, the most recent filed federal 990 forms, and other state required reporting requirements from the Attorney General's office and the California Franchise Tax Board. I want to direct your attention to the 4 bullets listed at the bottom of page 40, such as the articles of incorporation, mission statements, etc. The items listed here can be requested at any time during the review process from our office. If you have any questions, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. Now I'm going to hand it over to Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Esme. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the eligible and ineligible costs of this program. And so if we could turn to page 41, perfect. And so these eligible costs are the costs that you're going to be including on that grant scope cost estimate form that I talked about earlier in this workshop. So these planning costs dating back to the date of appropriation, which is July 1st, 2023, are eligible if the grant is awarded. But remember, the OEP program cannot start until after the funds are awarded, which is estimated to be summer of 2024. The eligible costs for activities in the community and natural area trips are split into 4 categories. And these are Part A there is supplies, equipment, and activity fees. Part B are travel costs. Part C are labor costs. And D is insurance for all activities necessary for the outdoor program. So we're going to start with Part A, which is on the next page, on page 42. And you'll see there the first bullet point that this program, OEP program, costs for activity fees will be eligible. So you'll see the activities there that we're talking about. Activity supplies and equipment. Supplies that can be kept by the participant, and these can include program t-shirts, reusable water bottles, hats, tote bags that are necessary again for the outdoor program. All other activity supplies and equipment must be retained by the grantee and used for future programming. Also, I want to call your attention to the most economical use of state funds. So again, that term was back when I was speaking about the cost estimate certification. So let's take a look at this. So for supplies and equipment that will cost over $500 per single unit item and or $10,000 per purchase transaction, and which can be purchased, leased, or rented, The most economical use of state funds must be applied. So this means that the grantee will use the most affordable option to complete the outdoor program during the grant performance period by either renting, leasing, or purchasing the supplies and equipment. So an example of this would be, let's say that a grantee will be taking 10 participants surfing for 3 trips. It may be a more economical use of state funds to rent those 10 surfboards each time rather than purchasing 10 surfboards. So again, it's that type of thing that we will need applicants to take a really good look at. So what is that most economical use? A detailed budget is not required this round. But again, you'll want to create one for yourselves to find out the costs again, if purchasing, leasing, or renting, and which one is the most economical use of state funds. For moving on to part B, which are the travel costs. Travel must be within California only. So, nothing outside of California will be eligible. So all travel must be within California only. Overnight accommodations, such as camping or lodging, are eligible costs. Food and food storage for the natural area trips, those are eligible costs. I want to draw your attention to that daily meal budget per participant for natural area trips. So an average of $20 per meal, which includes drinks and snacks, is allowed. If 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are necessary per day, the total maximum per participant is $60 per day. And so below that, you can see the calculation formulas and some more examples. Vehicle usage is also located under this part B. And so you could take a look there at the bottom of the page, the vehicle use for transportation of participants. You can read that about taking participants from their schools to and from the community home base, and also from the community home base to natural area trips. And this continues on the next page, on page 44. It's vehicles chartered or rented by the grantee, or vehicles owned and leased by the grantee. Also, passenger ticket purchases and public transportation fares are also eligible costs for this program. So part C, we have labor costs. So what type of labor costs are eligible? So employee services are eligible costs. And for these, we would like applicants to please see the accounting rules for the employee services, which are located in the grant administration guide. And the grant administration guide is located on our OEP website as well. Internships consistent with that grant selection criteria 6. Program activity providers, program management, communication and training, reporting, and grant administration and accounting. These are all eligible costs. For part D, and this is on the next page, on page 45, is insurance requirements. So premiums on liability insurance, including aggregate coverage for all activities necessary for the outdoor program. These are all, that is an eligible cost. If you go on our webpage there, that link, it provides an insurance policy checklist that lists the insurance policy requirements for grantees. Also, Private vehicle insurance costs are included within the state mileage reimbursement rate. Another thing I want to draw your attention to is please keep all records of all costs for audit purposes. So again, that is very important to keep every single invoice receipt to make sure that you can charge the grant with that. So moving on now, the next page is page 46. And page 46 are the ineligible costs. So you cannot charge the grant these costs that I'll be going over right now. So any costs that are outside of the grant performance period, again, these are costs that incur before or after the grant performance period. These are ineligible costs. Also, any indirect costs. So any overhead business expenses of the grantee's fixed or ordinary operating costs, and this can include rent, mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities, office supplies, etc. These costs are ineligible. Any capital project costs, so any construction or development of land or land acquisition, these are also ineligible costs. And adding to that, any land alteration projects that require CEQA, again, are ineligible. Vehicle acquisition for ownership, again, ineligible. Any class 3 e-bikes, which can exceed 20 miles per hour, any routine park maintenance, fundraising, foods for activities in the community. So serving meals during activities in the community is ineligible. However, food that is being prepared as an activity in the community for the purpose of consumption during the natural area trips is the only exception to this rule. So again, please see eligible costs under those travel costs for eligible food costs only during the natural area trips. So again, any travel outside of the state of California, those are ineligible costs. Any gifting of equipment, grantees are encouraged to continue using purchased equipment after the grant performance period for programming. If grant funding equipment is disposed of or sold during the grant performance period, the residual market value must be used for eligible costs or paid back to the state. Gifting of passes to the participants or the general public for use other than the planned purpose or times of the natural area trips or activities in the community for the outdoor program. Any gifting of awards, trophies, plaques, ribbons, medals, and prizes, these are all ineligible costs. Any gifting of money, such as promotional gift cards to recruit or reward participants for non-eligible costs. Excuse me, any grant writing and programs imposed on an applicant through legal mitigation. So again, these are all ineligible costs on pages 46 through 47. And again, please keep all of your records. So it's important to note that during an audit, any lack of record keeping can make claimed eligible costs ineligible. So again, please keep records of those costs. And so with that, if you have any questions about the eligible costs or ineligible costs, please put those in the chat feature. So now we're going to turn to page 48. And this is our appendices page. Again, this page summarizes the assistance available to applicants. Again, the first one there is application workshops. And so you're actually in one right now. So we have and we are providing those application workshops. Also, you will have access to program competitive project officers. Again, project officers are here to help you until the application due date. To find those project officers, Nikki's going to click on that link right there. And that's going to take you to the OEP page, and she's circling where you can find those project officers. So if she clicks that, it's going to take you to the list of project officers by county. And so on the left-hand side, you'll notice all the counties are listed in alphabetical order. And your project officer, it's going to be on the competitive side. So the competitive project officer, it's going to be in that green column. So those are going to be the project officers that you're going to reach out to during this application process. So let's turn back to 48, page 48. And again, project officers can provide feedback on the checklist items with the exception of project selection criteria, which is that checklist item number 2. If there are still incomplete items after the application deadline, project officers will work with applicants to determine timelines for those items. Remember, we are all here to help you every step of the way. One last thing I'd like to point out again, to please use those technical assistance pages that we went through with the grant selection criteria. So again, Nikki's highlighting there's the technical assistance for that grant selection criteria 1. So please use those items together when you're going through and putting together your application. So this concludes the OEP application guide portion of the workshop. So please, again, put any questions you have in the chat feature. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Victor.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine and team. Okay, let's go back to the program website and we'll do a few recaps for you. And then our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, will provide some thoughts. And after Cedric's closing remarks, we will open it up for questions. And we'll be here all the way through 4 p.m. as long as you have questions, so we can have a group discussion at that time. So on your screen, you'll see the Outdoor Equity Grant Program website. If you scroll a bit lower, the documents that we presented today are found in the application process section. Please click it, Nikki. And let's do a, first thing you'll see is the online application system. Please get familiar with this system early. In the past, with some of our programs, we'll have folks that are, entering their application on the final day of the deadline. We recommend that you start drafting your application early so you become familiar with the system. Common question or concern we get from applicants is, can our team review your draft applications before you click the submit button? And the answer is no. We cannot review or even see draft applications. So don't worry about drafting your application online, playing around with it. We cannot see it until you click the submit button. Okay, so that's one piece of advice for you. Okay, now let's go back, Nikki, to the application process section. All right, scroll down a bit and let's click on the timeline. Thank you. So as a recap, we're currently in the technical assistance phase, which runs all the way until through December. I just want to emphasize that our project officers are here to help you. I'll show you the link in a few minutes. Please, send emails to your competitive review project officers when you have questions, and our team looks forward to helping you. After the application deadline, we'll also may get back to you and guide you on what forms may need to be corrected. The only section of the application where we cannot accept revisions is the criteria section, where we use your criteria responses to rank your application. But other than that, if we find a mistake with a form or you're missing a form, we may come back to you and say, hey, can you please, fix this? And we'll work with you to help you complete your application. We expect the grant announcements to be made sometime in summer of 2024. A common question is what date or what month, and we cannot commit to that because it's your guess is as good as ours in terms of how many applications will be received statewide. So that does help determine our timeline. Now, the key thing is when you are planning your cost estimate, you're planning to start your program no earlier than, I'd say, late summer or fall of 2024. And you're planning to complete your program by spring of 2027. So spring 2027 is your goal to complete your program. Another common question we received from prior workshops is, does it have to be a program for that entire period of, let's say, fall 2024 through spring 2027? The answer is no. You can request to do a one-year program, a seasonal program. Again, as Christine mentioned, there is a grant request range where for some of the criteria, we'll compare what you plan to do based on your grant amount. So we understand that sometimes if you're asking for less funding, let's just say $100,000, we don't expect you to do the same as other applicants that are asking for $700,000, for example. So a 1 year or one season program may cost less, for example. So that's perfectly fine. Okay. All right, now let's go. Nikki, please go back to the application process section and let's bring up the competitive chart. Now this chart is not a application requirement, but it's just it's a guide to help you keep on track what you should be considering, what you should be planning. So it starts with the most basic information. Are you an eligible applicant? And then secondly, are you aware of how much you can request per application? And then it gets more detailed into the criteria from there. So use this as your planning guide. If the answer is no to any of these questions, you should reevaluate if you can make any adjustments to your plans to try to get to yes. That's our goal, is to help you try to get to yes. If you can't get to yes, please, contact your competitive review project officer, and they may be able to guide you. So let's go to our contact list next. Thanks, Nikki. All right. Your contact for the current round 2 applications will be the contacts in the green column, which are your competitive application pre-award project officers. So for example, if your home base will be in the county of Alameda, your contact for any questions for your new application will be Julianne Coronado. All right. So again, take advantage of the team. They actually look forward to helping you. Okay. The final resource that I'd like to bring out to you, which we haven't covered yet today, is the grant administration section of this website. So yesterday we received some questions about the invoice process or the payment request process. If you click on the grants administration section, the first resource you'll find is a grants administration guide. If you are selected for funding, you'll go through this administration guide with the admin team in OGALS. And there is a payments request section in this guide which explains the payment process. Okay, so please get familiar with that section as well before you apply. All right, a little bit lower. Actually, Nikki, go back to application process. I want to point out one more thing. We have another common question. Will this video be posted? The answer is yes. We post our webinars in this section here. So you'll see there are 2 prior webinars that we did back in August, and we'll add yesterday and today's webinars to this list as well. So you can always come back and watch this video later too. All right, at that, I'd like to have our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, provide some thoughts for you, and then we can open it up for questions. Thanks again.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you, team, for a wonderful presentation. I hope it was helpful to everyone who's on this call, that we were able to answer your questions that you have currently, and that if you have additional questions, you have a resource that you can get to. Our goal is simply to help you to put your best foot forward, and then we promise you that we will give every consideration to the merits of your project. That's been our history, and that's what we want our future to continue to be. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was that this is a unique program. We see this as a wonderful opportunity to do some things that I think many of us on this call have wanted to do for decades, and that is pay for those things that have been barriers for getting people into the outdoors. I mentioned to you, please, as you're looking at your program, that you think creatively and innovatively and see how you might be able to stretch yourselves, just as we're trying to stretch ourselves to provide a greater service. The goal here has to be, how can we ensure that social equity and equality and access are delivered to the people who need it the most? The development of the community home base is a step in that direction. The opportunity to make certain that communities feel that the nature and understand the nature that surrounds them, that is nearby, is theirs to enjoy and to have access to, but also to have those far off experiences, and ensuring that there is relevancy to an understanding of how it's all connected together. All of us here have a unique opportunity to do what no generation before us has been able to do. We have 125 agencies that are already engaged in the process of taking people into nature, and hundreds, if not thousands, of Californians who didn't have access before now have that access. We'll probably see another 100 or so new agencies that will be able to also engage in this new process. The opportunity is enormous. When you look around the country, there are very few places where we see that there's money available, and there's a passion and spirit and a network of individual organizations who are committed to the same process, and that is connecting people, developing a greater natural resource ethos, and making it relevant and empowering people. For us as a state agency, we want to be very clear how we view our programs. Our programs have been and will continue to be about social equity and delivering projects and delivering programs to those most need in California. Your help is desperately needed. Whatever we can do to help you put your best foot forward, we will do. But at the end of the day, if this program doesn't exist, what we want to see is a network in California unparalleled anywhere else in the world, where people have access to the natural world, where it can do its own magic with them, where they can utilize nature in a way that inspires confidence, and it also inspires a healthier lifestyle for us all. So on that note, I'm going to stop here and thank you again for being with us today. We will continue to stay here and allow you to have a group discussion. Please feel free to raise your hand. We'll allow you to open your mic, and we'll answer your questions for you live. And again, thank you for being here. Everyone have a great day. Team, I'll turn it back over to you, and we can begin the question and answers.
Great, thank you, Cedric. At this point, you can go ahead and just raise your hand. All right, Teresa, you're up.
Hi, thank you. This was really helpful. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have one with partners and then cost. Like, in our area, we're in a pretty small area in Mendocino, and our partners, some of them, like for example, a kayak company, they are also, I mean, this is going to take a lot of planning for them to be part of this. So they kind of are partnering then in that, like there's a real relationship and there's a lot of behind the scenes, but then we're also going to be reimbursing them for the services they're going to be providing. So does that disqualify them from being a partner?
Okay. Yeah, really good question. Nikki, can you please go to I'll start off with the answer, and team, anyone else wants to jump in, go ahead. Let's go back to the partnership technical assistance section. And that is on page, you'll probably find it before I even say what
57.
page. 57. Thanks, Kyle. Page 57. And let's start off with what types of partnerships will not receive credit. And so let's go a bit lower. Okay. So the first thing is, if you're thinking about a potential partner, just make sure it doesn't fall within items 1 through 3 in the bottom of page 57. And I'll give you a really simple example. Item 3, let's just say you're planning on partnering with a charter bus service to transport the community to a beach, for example. If they're charging the normal price that they would charge any organization, that's not a partnership. If they're willing to do it for free for like advertisement purposes, or they're willing to work out a deal that's not available elsewhere, that's definitely a major discount, then that could qualify as a partnership. Also, if we can go to, let's see here. Yeah, I think that's the best piece of advice. Now, let's also go back to the actual criteria for partnerships, because I want to point out um, uh, how to handle potential payment of grant funds to the partner. So if we can go down to the bottom of this page, and this is on page 27 for the partnership criteria, a real common question we get is what's required to establish partnership at the time of application. The response to page 27 will be sufficient. However, if you plan to actually pay the partner through grant funds, then a few things will be required. First of all, there will have to be an agreement between your organization and, which would at this point become the grantee, and the partner, which formalizes the following: description of the services to be provided, the time period for those services, the amount of the grant that will pay the partner, and also just awareness that the partners must report eligible costs, expenditures to the grantee, and the grantee will keep all records for an audit. So that's the basic system that will be required if you plan to use grant funds to pay the partner.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess I'm a little bit so we're like a community garden, and we were thinking of being kind of handling this grant. And being a community garden is not like, it's good for a lot of reasons because of where we're located and because we have a facility where kids and families can meet, and we're already sort of known in the community as providing that service. So we're a really good like base. But in terms of really satisfying the purpose of this grant and getting kids out and kids and families into nature, we're willing to take on all the legwork, but like all the people we're working with are really providing the meat of what it feels like the intent of this grant is. And we're really starting to create those relationships through this grant. And we've been looking for something like that in order, like, that's what our community lacks, is sort of that central force that can organize to make things like this happen. So it would involve us hiring a person who handled all of the logistics for this grant, which would mean getting in touch with so not necessarily our partners, let's just say that kayak company, but some would be partners, like with the state park. We have a couple parks right in our area, and they'd be coordinating with the people who handle education in that park. Would this grant cover that person's salary as it related to this grant?
Yeah, I mean, it's really for eligible costs, We start with a real high level explanation, and that is it necessary to achieve the goals of the program?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay,
and
yeah,
so
that's pretty, but like we cannot, there's no way we could do this grant if we had to pay the salary of that person, at least in the initial 2 years until that became part of a bigger part of our mission and we could help to fundraise for that position.
Yeah. So it's definitely, let's go back to the eligible cost section for labor.
Okay.
And I'll give you some examples because it's always good to know where you can cite, what you can cite in the guidelines
Yeah.
to your, your own like colleagues or partners as well. So let's go to page 44, section C. Thank you, Nikki. And some examples that you just provided, I think, are like the third bullet point, program activity providers. These don't have to be within your current staff. So you can like literally include in your budget the hiring of nature guides or language translators or drivers, for example. Also, program management. If you don't have somebody in-house to provide program management, that could be contracted out, for example. So
But do you,
it's mhm.
like, sorry to butt in, but like I read through all these and I'm like, wow, that doesn't really line up with what I'm talking about, which is that designated person that's just administering like the grant pretty much and bringing in all those partnerships and providing that really critical piece of coordination, which is where all other things in our community fall apart when we don't have that person.
Mhm.
And that I find with all grants is the hardest thing to get funded. Like, do you
Sure.
feel like this, like this is
Yeah,
going to be
absolutely.
a lot of
It's
time for me
Yeah, I
to
can
do
jump in.
this?
It's
Yeah.
definitely the fourth bullet point, program management. One example you just provided was coordinating partners, and so that's the second example in that section.
Okay.
Scheduling activities. S- uh, uh, so that's definitely eligible. As
Yes.
well as
Get activities. Yeah.
yeah, and he also mentioned administration, so that's in the bottom bullet point. So if your organization doesn't have um, current employees to do that, which is also eligible, you can hire somebody else to either expand your workforce or contract out or have a partnership.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it's all eligible.
And so even if I have present employees, if they're doing the work of that, then their their salary or whatever percentage of it can be used for this grant. Can be
That's
covered.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. So that will fall under the first bullet point
Okay.
under section C on page 44, employee services. And we have a note to see the accounting rules for employee services. So that's in the grants administration guide. And the bottom line is like, yes, their actual salary is eligible based on their actual time spent on this program.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Okay, who had their hand up next?
We have Big Mama's Corner. You can
Great.
unmute and ask your question.
Thanks, Nikki.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
Big Mama. My name is Sandra, and I have a couple of questions. I'm a 501c3, and I got so confused when it asked about the 990 form for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry. Go ahead.
I put in the chat that it was last year that I got my nonprofit.
Got
I
it.
applied.
Okay. So yeah, I saw your chat question. So you're asking if you still would be eligible as a new nonprofit, right?
Right.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that's on page 40. Everyone, Nikki, on page 40. Let's go to page 40. And that's the question is about item 2. So the purpose behind item 2 was to look at the track record of the nonprofit. If you have been established for less than 2 years, you can send us an email and we could take a look at your organization. You have to be registered to be eligible. You have to be registered to do business in California. So that comes from, of course, item 1 and as well as item 3. So you have to be registered through the Attorney General's registration of charitable trusts, and we have a link for you on item 3. And then for item 2, if you've not yet filed the 990 forms, then you can provide a placeholder. As long as we approve you to proceed, you can provide a placeholder and just tell that story of that you don't have 2 years of filing. If you have 1 year of filing, then you can provide that. But I will say that, like, a new organization that it would be best if you send us some information up front before you, I think, go through the entire application process, and we can take a look at your organization and tell you whether you should proceed or maybe form another, or maybe a partner with another organization in the community.
Okay.
Because another option is, let's just say, like, if there hasn't been any filing, et cetera, another option could be to find like a fiscal sponsor, which could be like another eligible applicant. It could be like another nonprofit that may have another track record, or a local public agency, for example. That could also be a possible outreach partnership type that could work for you as well.
And the other organization, does it have to be a nonprofit?
It could be any type of eligible applicant. So the eligible applicants are listed on page, let's see, where was it? On page 6. So it could be like a school district or other public education agency, any type of like local public city, county, special district, federal or state recognized tribes, or nonprofits. So it's a broad range of eligible applicants.
Okay. And then who would I just email to who once I come up with?
Great question. So on our team, can you post our website in the chat real quick too, and the link to our project officers. So on the screen, you'll see where it says top right corner, it says project officers by county.
Yes.
What county are you located in?
San Bernardino.
There you go. All right. Let's scroll down to San Bernardino, and your contact would be Kyle Bolin. Okay. So you can go ahead and email Kyle some information about your organization, and he can definitely guide you on what's the best approach, whether it's deemed you're eligible or a partner could be formed.
Okay. And then I'm in the city of San Bernardino, and where you talked about the community areas.
Yes.
We have so many areas in San Bernardino City that are under the umbrella for this need to get out in the outdoors, to go camping. My thing is kids going camping. It solves a lot of problems. I've been camping for many years, and I know what it's done for me, and I worked in the school district, so I know how it would be beneficial to children. Is there a way that the 3 community areas could be in the same city?
Okay, great question. Before I remind me at the end of my answer if I don't cover it, Cedric may want to talk about the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program and FAM Camp. If you haven't gone through FAM Camp yet, that's also a really good program for you to be aware of too. So, okay. So if you're thinking about multiple community home bases. The key thing to understand is each application has to have only one community home base established. So let's say you're thinking about like serving 3 different areas of the city. You would, you really have 2 choices. One choice is just to focus on establishing one community home base in one application, because this criteria on your screen requires just one community fact finder report for criteria number 1. So that's one key is you might want to prioritize like which community. I would say which area has the lowest income or the highest number of people in poverty as a good starting point between the options you're looking at.
That's the problem with the city of San Bernardino.
Yeah, there's multiple spots, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And
Yeah.
my question should be like the community area. I can only service that community, or could other communities come into that area
Yeah,
to be serviced?
you can. So you can. Let's say you choose one community home base at San Bernardino. You're going to have one application. The definition of participants, which is in the back of the guide, does say that people that live further than a half mile of the community home base may also be participants. But
Okay.
so that is possible.
But my goal is that area, but I can accept.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You got it. So you're gonna primarily like serve and outreach folks that live within a half mile of the home base, but you can also accept people that come from a further distance. That's eligible. The second option is, you could spread the word maybe and find some other, if there are any other organizations that you trust could do a great job. Maybe you are the applicant or the lead for one community home base and one application, and another organization could apply through a separate application to serve another part of the city.
Well, I don't
know who could do that, right?
Right. I mean, it's hard for people to want to do anything with kids and for kids.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I don't know of any program in this area that is actively taking kids camping.
Okay.
And
sorry.
And
go ahead.
And with my camp, my system that I have is like they go to each camping trip, which will be 3: the desert, the beach, and the mountains. And with each one, there will be a day trip. Because I work and lived in this area so long, that most of the children in this area has never been to the beach, never been camping, never been to the zoo. That's horrifying to me. Never stepped out of the city limits.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
so
that's definitely the spirit of the program. Your heart's in the right place.
Yeah, I just want to take some kids camping and experience the wonders of the world.
Absolutely.
The natural world. So, okay. Well, you answered all my questions. Excellent. And you heard my heart, so I will try my best to get this done.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Okay.
And also, I just want to mention there's a real established program that is through our another team within our division under Cedric Mitchell, and that is the Office of Community Involvement. And so if you look at item 5 on page 11, there's some information about it. So have you heard about Fam Camp or gone through it yet?
No, I haven't. This is the first I've heard of it.
Okay, excellent. So I'll do a quick explanation here. So either you or a colleague could enroll through what's called the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Training, which is it's typically like a 2-night, 3-day camping training, and when you go through, after you go through the training, you'll be certified to then bring a group of youth to a state park for camping, and the campsites provided, as well as the camping equipment. So
I
the
have
tents,
camping equipment. I have tents. I'm ready.
nice.
You know, I got donations for that kind of stuff, and I've been a camper, so I have all this stuff. I just don't
Excellent.
have the insurance and the means and the money. So that's
Got it.
what, but I would love to attend the camp.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
you can. Cedric, go ahead, Cedric.
Yeah, the camp we're going to be posting probably in a few weeks what next year's calendar is going to look like starting in the spring, and it's a 3-day 2-night training. There are some folks in San Bernardino, I think, with the city that Loma Linda University, they have gone through the program also, um, and um, and they have access to the Fam Camp program currently. And I'm trying to remember. I think it was with City Parks and Rec. We had two different organizations that have received a grant and have also gone through the training. Um, the training, there's for non-OEP recipients, the training is $200, but that guarantees that's just certifies you for 2 years, your organization, and all the equipment and the campsites are free during that 2-year period for the programs that we have. In your area, we have a site at Silverwood,
Okay.
up,
Yeah. That,
and I think where else in Castaic Lake on the west end, as well as Malibu Creek and Leo Carrillo State Beach, are all potential sites down in your region.
okay. All that I have been camping during my life. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you
That's
send us, if you would just maybe send a quick email with your information, I'll make sure that the community involvement team gets you on the mailing list, and we can make sure that you're aware of when the new class dates are going to be.
okay. So who do I email?
You can send it to me, Cedric. That's S as in 7, EDRICK Mitchell, MIT, CAGLL at parks.ca.gov.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get it on that list.
If nothing else, this will help me find a way. So I appreciate that very
Certainly.
much. And I'd like to also tell you guys are very informative. I had like 2 pages of stuff. And when I got to the 990 form, it was like, ugh, I don't qualify, but I might. So it was worth my time. And I'm amazed that this program goes on and the grants and stuff, because it is such a need. It is. Educationally wise. And yes.
For the reason you said, I mean, it is amazing that throughout California, there's so many young people that even graduate, go all the way through high school and don't even, get out of their community and get to see the beach or forest or mountains. So this is definitely the program to change that. So
Yes.
thank you so much for your interest. All right, who's next?
Next up, we have Teresa.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'm back with one more question. That was really helpful. Is there that the program you were just speaking about, that's called what's the title of that camp? Was that FAM camp? Is that what you said? The FAM camp program?
Yes. So there's there's basically 3 programs under what's called the Office of Community Involvement.
Okay.
And you can get a link to their website on item 5 on
Okay.
page 11. And
Okay.
and Nick, you also post a link in the chat feature to their program. So basically, the way to get access to FamCamp, you have to have someone from your organization go through what's called the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program training first. And it is an
Yeah.
awesome program. Once you graduate from that, then you'll have access to lead a group of residents to use the FAM camp campsite as well as the trailer equipment.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome. And then my second question was, in terms of I saw that there is a section for planning costs. Is that right on this grant?
Correct.
Is can any hourly input into putting together this grant be offset by the grant if it's awarded to us?
Yeah, great question. So let's go to the answer is yes, except for grant writing. Okay.
Okay.
And let me but I'll also give a little more thorough answer too. I think Cedric wanted to say something before we go there. Cedric?
Go ahead.
Okay. So let's see here. If we go to the eligible cost section, and that Nikki has it on the screen on page 41, you'll see that planning costs going back to the what's called the date of appropriation are eligible. If you can make a note that for this round, that is July 1st of 2023. So since we've already passed that date, let's just say you start now, you're going into the community, you're going to start meeting with residents as you know what's required in criteria 2. Just keep records of time spent, who spent that time, any other costs, like if you had to buy any equipment or supplies. It's eligible for reimbursement if your grant's awarded. So that's the only cost that is eligible for reimbursement dating back to before the application is submitted. So again, that's July 1st of 2023. Now, if the grant's awarded, you're going to have to wait to start actually taking the community to nature area trips, or you're going to have to wait for doing the activities in the community until after our administrative team, of course, has you go through your grants administration workshop, get your grant contract signed, and also your insurance will be reviewed by the team as well to make sure you have sufficient insurance to proceed. Okay. So for that reason, I'm thinking like fall of 2024 might be the earliest you can start your program, because it will take a few months to go through that process after our grants are announced.
So in terms of, I'm just thinking about putting together the meetings and getting the public to come out to get input from them on the programming. Could like an ad in the paper, would that be a little extravagant? Certainly, like it sounds like you guys will cover flyers and that kind of stuff, and going however we want to kind of promote those events.
Great question. I mean, it's I think outreach costs are eligible for those meetings. I just want to, the word extravagant really, I know you're thinking of cost, right? And so costs that you incur before a grant is awarded is obviously at your own risk. So I'd really like bounce that question back to you and say, if your organization is willing to front those costs at your own risk, go for it, because they are eligible for reimbursement. However, again, it's the program will be competitive. So that's the main thing, is to be aware that the community planning costs up front are definitely at your own risk, but eligible for reimbursement going back to July 1st if the grant's selected.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you really want the input of the people who are going to be participating. And I just feel like, especially in our community, like people are really tired when they get home from work. And so, things like that's definitely going to be an effort for people in making it really, we're going to provide childcare, which I can probably figure all that out. But yeah, I want to make sure that we're able to do that in a really good way. So it's something I'm thinking about. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I do want to point out something, because we do understand that outreach and meetings can be really elaborate. On page, let's go back to the scoring rubrics on page 20 for both outreach as well as ideas that were accepted that will be used. So I just want to really again point out that here we're talking about a 2-point option. So to score the points, you just have to have 2 in-person meetings, first of all, within a half mile of the home base. And at least one meeting should be during a weekend or evening.
Mhm.
And between all the meetings you have, you just need to involve 10 youth and 10 adults. So it could be, let's just say that on the lowest level, it could be like 10 youth in one meeting, 10 adults in the second meeting, and you're good. Or it could be 5 and 5 in each, for example. So, and then finally in the second part on page 20, there will be points given for accepting some ideas that came from those meetings that came from the residents. So you just have to list what ideas came from those meetings that will be accepted. So you don't really have to have like just to be, you don't have to have like 10 meetings with 1,000 residents, for example, to score these points. And the second thing is on page 50, we give some cost-effective approaches for outreach. So some of the things that we know have worked well in the past is of course taking your meeting to where residents are versus having them have to commute, an hour or half an hour to get to your meeting. That will definitely help with access. But also, item 2, maybe finding like a local young person or a local neighborhood adult that is kind of seen as a leader or wants to be a leader. And often they can also even help with language translation, and they can definitely do outreach. So sometimes we've seen it to be pretty effective to form like a local coalition of neighborhood residents that could be your champions and getting other residents to come to your meeting. So that also could help. So there's some ideas here that are very grassroots, but we've seen it work in the past for other programs to help keep costs low.
Okay, thank you. That's so helpful. Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, who's next, Nikki?
Next, we have Middletown Rancheria.
Okay.
You can go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Hello, I do apologize. My name is Camille Leggett. I am the grant writer at Middletown Rancheria.
Hi, Camille.
And I just want to say thank you so much for just giving us more information, and also for your department offering this grant. This is definitely going to help a lot of communities, a lot of youth, and more specifically Native communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your interest.
So I just wanted to touch on a few questions that I have. I know that Middletown Rancheria is definitely interested in applying for this specific grant, but we just have a few questions. I know, I think you've answered them with the other questions that were asked prior. We do have a Boys and Girls Club that is specific to tribal members. So that way individuals who reside on the reservation, they can have childcare options as they work. And so I'm not sure, and I believe this is a no, but I'm not sure if Middletown Rancheria with their Boys and Girls Club, if they can kind of partner with this type of program to make it a summer program for the Boys and Girls Club, or would it have to be a separate program?
Yeah, I can't see why it would have to be a separate program unless I missed something.
Okay.
Team, is there any reason why anyone else have any reason why it could not be why it would need to be a separate program? Yeah, I think as long as you of course establish that community home base, Cedric, go ahead.
First of all, Boys and Girls Clubs are eligible in their own right to apply, and the programming that you're talking about doing, it wouldn't just be the normal Boys and Girls Club programming. It would be programming specifically geared towards getting youth and families in the outdoors. Am I correct on that? So if that's true, then there shouldn't have to be a separate programming. It would just be your partners in the delivery of that. And is the Rancheria going to be the fiscal agent, or is it that you want the Boys and Girls Club to apply directly?
The Rancheria would be the fiscal solely.
Okay.
So thank you so much for double checking and just clarifying that for me. In regards to my next question, I just wanted to follow up to see if the grant would provide funding for the budget and allowable costs. Would that also include camp leaders or, individuals who we will send out to receive training and have all the certifications? We would definitely want to pay them.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few ways you could do it. Whether that would be through forming internships or their staff or you're contracting out, that would all be eligible. So it goes back to the labor section on page 44. And for example, some of the examples you provided were in the third bullet point, and that's nature guides, physical activity instructors. So definitely folks that are going to lead your programs, paying for their staff, their transportation, equipment, supplies, necessary certification, of course, having them insured, that's all eligible.
Perfect.
Mhm.
And just wanted to double check as well. I know you mentioned the FAM campsites.
Yes.
Just wanted to double check. Are those just solely areas where we could do the camping, or could we possibly do it in native land as well? So that way we can have like a historical context for the community, and they can have a connection with their ancestral land and practices.
Great question. So I'll Cedric, go ahead and I'll add on anything else.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So at this time, the trailers are specific to the state parks that they're in. They're not trailers that we loan out that people can tow to a different area. It's just not set up to do that way. But of course, the program does allow for you to purchase your own equipment, and where you choose to have that, the kinds of activities you want to have, that's up to you, because that would be eligible. It's just the FAM camp trailer are specific to the parks that they're in, and we can't allow them to go out on the road.
Awesome. Is there any way that I can receive some form of like a map to know some of the locations in Northern California?
Certainly. If you go to our website, I think it's been posted in the chat, the Office of Community Involvement's website, and all the contacts are there. I think Nikki, did you put it in the chat already?
Yes,
Not,
that I will
repost it.
also direct it to her attention.
Okay,
Awesome.
good. So you'll get that, and then you can contact us, and also, and it'll have the listing of the latest places where we have them. In Northern California, it's places like Calaveras Big Trees, San Luis Reservoir. Where are you located exactly?
So we're located in Lake County area,
Okay.
more specifically northern area of
Okay.
Lake County. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure with all the redwoods there should be several FAM campsites.
Currently, Sumay Park in Northern California, far north, there is a program up there. We did have it at Humboldt State Redwoods. And then I think we have Samuel P. Taylor as you come down to the Bay Area, but not too much way up north.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, I'm sorry to ask 21 questions, but I just want to make sure I'm thorough. I wanted to double check with the ORL training program. So I know you mentioned earlier that the training cost is $200. I'm not necessarily sure if that is per person for the organization or just for the organization in general. So let's say if we wanted to send potentially 3 or 4 individuals to receive this training, we just want to know the cost.
It would be per person. If you receive the grant, 2 slots will be available to you for free. But if you're interested in going, please contact the staff. Dolores Mejia is the manager of that office, and then all of that money goes back into the program. It goes into trailer repair and equipment repair and replacement, that kind of thing. It's how the program is sustained.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Great questions. Okay, who's next?
We don't have any hands raised at this time.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go back to part of your most recent question about travel to like tribal land, for example. And so outside of like fam camp, I just really kind of circle back to our definition of nature area trips. So you understand the broad, you can really use your imagination of the broad possibilities of where you can take your participants. So that is on page 62. And you'll see that it basically says beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, and state and national parks within California. So if you are, you can propose to take your participants to any natural area destination within California. Okay, and the grant can support whether it's a national park or tribal land. The grant can support the transportation, equipment, supplies, and camping or lodging costs as well for overnight trips, and food for overnight trips as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Victor, one thing I wanted to add, when you're with the Office of Community Involvement, if there's special programs or an opportunity to do something out of the norm, it's best to talk to the staff about it, talk to the manager, Dolores. We do and have done specialized programs in the past, and we do have our trainings. We have done our trainings in multiple locations. We've done for some communities where, if we have time allowing and of course resource available, we've done specialized training closer to home, because there was just no facilities, especially during time when we were going through the severe drought and economic downturn that was happening. Central Valley, we did several programs that were specialized for the youth who were in those regions. So nothing's out of the possibility. It's a small team, so it can be very nimble. So if you have ideas, please bring them up with Dolores or myself if you have them.
Thank you, Cedric. So team, is there any question in the chat section that we need to discuss with the group? Christine and Kyle, I know you've been reviewing the questions coming in through chat.
Yes, I actually have one here, and I apologize. I've been typing away, so I'm not sure if you answered Stephanie's question yet. But Stephanie in the chat at 3:15, if you want to take a look at it, asked a question regarding supplanting. And she says, if we currently have an outdoor program but only funded through 2025, can this grant be used to supplement the program in 24/25, but take over the existing program in 25/26 and 26/27 if we are meeting the requirements of the grant?
Great one, Christine. Thank you. So let's piggyback. If any of you are still here that are also a round one grantee, the answer will be the same for both scenarios. Okay. Great question. So let's turn to let's turn to criteria number 1B on page 17. All right. So the intent of this program, the basic intent of this program is to provide access for residents who currently lack it. So the need has to be demonstrated. So if you look at part B that Nikki highlighted, it says, why was this community home base selected as a central gathering place in the community for residents who currently lack access? You know, make a note or circle those keywords, who currently lack access. Okay. So if you are requesting funding for an ongoing program, whether it's a program that was funded through a round one grant of this program at the same community home base, or you have other outside grant funding that is currently funding your program, we're going to ask this key question is, why is this grant needed for residents who currently lack access? You would have to propose to be competitive. I mean, you would be eligible, okay, but to be more competitive, you'd have to be clear how you plan to either serve residents who are currently not being served by the program or projected not to be served. So that could be a different age group. We've heard examples where maybe some folks focus on a certain grade, and you'll know that 2 years from now, those students will move on. That's one example. But the other example is to provide opportunities that are not currently available. If you are just looking to continuing your program for the same people and doing the same things, it would not be as competitive. Okay. Okay, anything else?
Another question just came in from Erin about, she says, does training leaders / interns who will become future youth leaders count as learning activities?
Yeah, I think that's, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think you're referring to criteria number, let's get to it real quick. Criteria number 6, which is internships through service learning, career pathway, and leadership opportunities. So let me kind of give you a layered answer here, Aaron. The first of all, when you're thinking about your interns and developing leaders, like training leaders, the first thing to be aware of is your goal of scoring points. So look at the 8-point option on the bottom of your screen here on page 26. So on page 26, it says at least 3 residents will each receive 200-hour internships. So if you're thinking of training leaders as interns, then to be competitive, your plan is going to be 200 hours of experience per intern going through the training. The other part of the answer is you could also like train other leaders that may have less hours involved. But my main point of advice is this is another example where you want to make sure you're still staying on track to be competitive and scoring those points. So within your plan, just we do recommend that you go for the 3 interns, each receiving 200 hours of experience and training as leaders. The second part is, let's go back to page 56.
Before you leave that, Victor.
Sure, Cedric.
So one of the things that is eligible, if you're doing, sometimes you may have a program where you want to provide multiple youth leadership opportunities or experiences, but maybe they're not your interns. They're youth in the program. Maybe they're a little older, volunteering, whatever that might be. a program like the Outdoor Youth Connection program that we represent, or that we run every year, is eligible under the program. So you can send, and many OEP recipients have sent, their youth to that program. It's all about leadership and confidence development, overcoming fears, etc. And so, just as part of your programming, if you're thinking in terms of providing certainly the structured internship leadership positions that are stipend, that's one thing. If you're looking to provide tangential leadership skills that your group, maybe your older students are going to be working with younger students, or they're going to do something collectively, and you want them to have some leadership experience, a camp like that is something that would be eligible under your program. And if you're interested, just feel free to talk to us about that. And that's one example that's on the screen right now. It's Outdoor Youth Connection leadership training.
And I'd also like to just give you just another kind of broad intent of this program, which it sounds like, Aaron, your question is aligned with. Let's go to the definition of education, because education is one of those key words that showed up in both the criteria number 3, activities in the community, and criteria 4, nature area trips. And let's look at the last example on the next page. Actually, Nikki, if you can backtrack a bit. Let's start off with, there you go, item 4 on page 60, where it says additional learning opportunities may also include the following. And so one of them is to promote service learning opportunities between schools and local communities. And then also, let's go to the next page on page 61, top of page 61. Community outreach methods and civic engagement related to environmental justice. You can provide youth leadership education on that. And also the last bullet point on page 61, career pathway mentoring related to natural resource agencies, environmental protection, park operations, and therapeutic recreation. So those are all activities that you can include within your activities in the community, response to criteria 3, as well as your nature area trip experience under criteria 4. So keep that in mind when you see the word education. Training leaders to become future stewards and future environmental program leaders is definitely within the definition of education as well. So it could qualify as an intern or actually part of your programming for all participants too. Okay, you're welcome, Aaron. Great. Okay, any more questions? Great questions. Okay, we'll do a 2-minute countdown. If there's no more questions, we'll close at 4 p.m. If you have more questions, we'll stay a little bit longer. So 2-minute countdown for more questions. Thank you, everyone.
This is Camille Leggett from Middletown Rancheria, and we just want to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks again for your interest too. Our team, we like to say that the success of this program relies on you as applicants. So we strongly believe that. So we're here to help throughout the process. It doesn't end today. We'll be here to help all the way through December.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, any more questions? Okay, one more minute and then we'll close unless there's questions. Thank you. Okay, team, the workshop's over. Please stop the recording and thank you everyone again for your interest.